The senator from Minnesota.
Mr. President, I appreciated the words of my colleague from Maryland because I was standing there thinking that a budget is actually a choice. It's a value choice. It is an economic choice of where you want to spend the taxpayers' hard-earned money. And what this budget does, as he points out, $6 trillion in the next 10 years that would add to the debt because of tax cuts for the wealthiest people. I have no problem making sure we don't increase taxes for people making under $400,000 a year. That's a good idea. But this is a way different animal than that. It actually takes the parts of the Trump tax cuts for the wealthy, makes sure they stay in place, and then adds even more so that 2/3 of the benefits from this are going to the wealthiest and the big corporations. And the thing he raised that I loved was, what could you do with that money? Well, you could reduce the debt. That'd be a good thing. You could put part of it so that we make sure we do that. You could put the funding into actually taking on some, say, tax incentives for housing, which we so dearly need, to work with the private sector to build more housing. You could put it into incentives for childcare. You could shore up Social Security. You could do all kinds of great things that the people actually thought they were voting for, even a large number of them that voted for Donald Trump. But that's not what this budget is. So I appreciate Senator Van Hollen pointing out that in the end, these budgets are a choice. Who do you want to spend the money on? What do you think is going to work for this economy? We already know that Donald Trump has sent this economy into a tailspin as the market continues to go down. And this isn't just a market. As horrified as traders are and experts on Wall Street, you got to take it to Main Street. And when you take it to Main Street, you've got people who have been depending on their retirement, whether it's a 401k or some other kind of retirement, for the rest of their lives. Or you have people who've saved money for their kids to go to school. Or you have young people just starting out who maybe have, 5 years into savings, don't know if their job's still going to be there because the economy's going into a tailspin. That's a choice. That's a totally self-inflicted wound yesterday. That was a choice. The economy, coming out of the pandemic, struggling through all of that, inflation and the like, was actually, when Donald Trump took over, in a pretty good place. And look what he's done. Completely unnecessary self-inflicted wound, but the problem is who it wounds. Thousands of dollars in taxes on the average family. $20,000 more for a home for young people that might want to buy their first home. More money to buy a car. It goes on and on and on. So when I look at that budget, I can't just see it in a vacuum. I see it in this totality of what's going on right now. Because with these tariffs, the wealthiest people, they're going to lose billions of dollars or millions of dollars. They're going to be fine, though, because they got everything else. But it's the people who are living paycheck to paycheck or depending on the Social Security. They're the ones that's going to suffer from this. And then you add this budget to the mix. This budget would give massive tax cuts to the ultra-wealthy and pay for it by raising costs, taking away health care, threatening the economic security of tens of millions of Americans. It is a major handout to the wealthy. If you don't know what the numbers are, here's a great one to remember. It would give Elon Musk a $50 million tax break over the next 10 years. Do we really think he needs that? Does he need $10 million more? He does not. You could literally structure this budget so that you are not reducing taxes or giving special deals to people making over $400,000 a year. You could do that. But that's not what this is. It went the opposite. It gives the wealthiest 0.1% an average tax cut of $180,000 a year. In total, over the next 30 years, it would spend $25 trillion on tax cuts for the wealthy and the big corporations. Meanwhile, what's happening to people's grocery prices? What's happening to their health care prices? What's happening to their housing prices. This isn't speculation. Look at what happened the last time the Republicans ran this playbook in 2017. They told us back then those tax cuts would trickle down, that wages would go up, that jobs would come back. What actually happened? Big companies spent nearly $1 trillion on stock buybacks to enrich their executives and their wealthy shareholders. Wages for working people barely moved, manufacturing jobs didn't boom, but the first year after that passed, corporate America spent over $800 billion buying back its own stock, at more than 50% higher than the year before. And this year, those buybacks are projected to top $1 trillion for the first time ever. That helps Wall Street, not Main Street. So here we are again. Same trickle-down theory, just repackaged with even more debt and even fewer benefits for the middle class. As noted, the debt, this budget, the Congressional Budget Office estimates it would add $37 trillion to the debt over the next 30 years. $37 trillion on the backs of our kids, grandkids. That's right. We're leaving the next generation to foot a $37 trillion bill so we can give billionaires a tax cut today. That is the choice. And it's all wrapped up in very complex language, so it doesn't sound like they're doing it, but check actual news sources. Look at this to verify what the actual numbers are. $25 trillion of it is tax cuts for the wealthy and big corporations over the next 30 years. The kicker, they're trying to hide that massive debt. What even their own members, these are Republican elected members of Congress, have called a budget gimmick, intellectual fraud, and my favorite one, fairy dust. Instead of leveling with the American people, they're using an accounting trick to pretend that these new tax cuts cost nothing. I believe that the American people know better. I believe they know better when they woke up this morning to see where the stock market was and thought about all their hard-earned money and what they were doing with it. I believe they know better when they look at any kind of simple description of what this budget is. They promised to lower the deficit, but this budget adds trillions to the debt. They promised to bring down costs, but you don't even need to check the news. Just go down the grocery aisle and see if that has really happened. And they promised to put everyday Americans first. But this budget, it puts the wealthiest first, or they wouldn't be getting the lion's share of the benefit. Under this plan, health care for nearly $80 million of Americans is at risk, including 2/3 of nursing home residents, 2 in 5 kids, and 1 in 3 Americans living in rural areas. That's because, why do I say that? I'm just making that up. So no, that's because the budget plan includes instructions to cut $880 billion from the House Energy and Commerce Committee. That's the one the House sent over, which oversees Medicaid. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, said it plainly. It is mathematically impossible to meet that target without cutting Medicaid. This is a plan to cut Medicaid. That's why we have a different vision. You could do a budget, and I see Ron Wyden is here, the highest-ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee. He knows what we could do if they would work with us. We could do a budget that would lower costs, not raise them. And how does this raise costs for people? You already see it right now, and they're not doing anything about it. You see the tariffs are going to make it worse, and then you also see what's going on with this budget with Social Security, Medicaid, and the like. We could strengthen Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Instead of giving a $300,000 tax cut to someone in the top 0.1%, we could invest in child care, affordable housing, education, and yeah, affordable energy. And at the same time, we could put some aside to bring down the debt. That's how we support working families. That's how we make sure our seniors retire with dignity. So we are standing up all day today to expose this budget for what it really is. It is benefits for the wealthy and the big guys at the expense of everyone else, and that means you. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.